Alright, welcome to another Crocotile 3D video. In this video I'll be showing you how to create a character model. So something that's a little bit more organic looking regarding the geometry and that sort of thing. This video is going to kind of assume that you already know some stuff about Crocotile 3D, and so I'm going to try to focus on things that'll help you create more organic shapes and things that are suitable for character models and that sort of stuff. So I've been working on this character for a while, and this will show you kind of what you're capable of doing in Crocotile 3D. But we're not gonna go this advanced because it'll take quite a while. So we're gonna try and do something a little bit more simple, just to get certain points across, and then you could take it from there and create however complicated models you want to make, right? Alright, so as you probably know, Crocotile uses tiles and from tile sets, and you choose a tile and you place it into the scene and that sort of thing. Okay, so this, if you're new to Crocotile, you might think that, oh, it's just used for rectangular, square placement of the tiles, and you might not have that much control over more organic shapes and that sort of thing, or you may not really understand how to go about creating those shapes, because when you place tiles, it just places it to these planes on the X, Y, and Z axis. Okay, so how do we create more organic shapes? Well, that's what I'm going to show you. So first of all, what you want to do, I guess a good thing to create is a new blank tile set, because we're going to need a texture or an image for the texture of the character model, and the size, you can make it any size that you want. So I'll just start with 16 by 16, and you could use pixel dimensions as well. So now if you look here, there's this checkered option, and this will make the image have a checkered pattern, and you could choose which colors for the checkered pattern. Now in the settings, there is a checkered size under the tile sets section, and you could adjust the size of the squares in the textured pattern. Okay, I'm just going to leave it as 1. So when we go and add a blank tile set and we have this checkered option, I could choose the color, and also notice the colors are relative to the current colors that you're using in the painting tab. Okay, so but you could change them if you want by clicking on them and then choosing a color. So I could choose that color, and then I could choose something like that. Okay, so I could choose those colors and then create the tile set, and it'll create this tile set with a checkered pattern. So why would I want a checkered pattern on my tile set? Well, when you're creating your model and you're placing the tiles and that sort of thing, and then you start moving the vertices around, notice how the texture on the tile gets a little stretched out, as you can see here. So the usefulness of having a checkered pattern like this allows you to see how those pixels are being displayed on the polygons of your tile. Okay, and then when you adjust the UVs of the tiles by clicking on a tile, then going into the UV editor, here's the UV being shown being displayed on the tile set. You can adjust the UVs like so to kind of fix the stretched pixels if you want. And by having a checkered pattern there, you could see how your changes to the UVs display the texture in different ways. Okay, so if it's like this, it looks more stretched out, and you can just kind of fix it like that. So now it's a little less stretched out, and maybe it's a little kind of stretched over down here, so maybe I can move this one down like that, and now it's a little less stretched. And notice how the UV coordinates, I'll just move it over here so you can see it a little better. You can see how it kind of represents the shape of the tile a little bit better. You know, you have the top of the tile that has a length of this long, and over here in the UVs we have a length that's kind of longer than the other lengths compared over here. And then this edge over here of the tile is kind of the second longest one, and it's kind of the same thing that's occurring in the UVs, how we've adjusted it here. So we kind of represent the shape of the tile in the UVs a little more accurately to how the geometry is. And maybe in the future I'll implement a feature that'll kind of automatically do that for you. But that's just one thing to think about, and why you would want to use a checkered pattern on your tile set, on your texture image. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind as you move around the vertices and adjust the shape of the model. Okay, so another thing you want to consider when moving the vertices is that you can adjust the grid rounding size down here. Right now it's set to 8, and what that corresponds to is like how many pixels it would move. So if I move this back to where it was, I'm going to disable these arrows because they get in the way sometimes. Now if I hit the S key, it'll move the vertice down 8 pixels. And notice how we could count these pixels over here: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it moved it 8 pixels. Okay. And if I adjust this to 4, the grid rounding size, and then move it, it'll move it 4 pixels at a time. Okay. And so by adjusting the grid rounding value, you could get more intricate details or subtle differences in the way the geometry is structured. Okay, so that's one thing to consider. And so you could set it to 1 and get a more fine tuning of the vertices and where they're placed. And you could hold space and press W and S to move it forward and back, and A and D left, right, and W and S on their own for up and down. So, but you're probably familiar with that if you're using Crocotile 3D already. And so yeah, now how do we actually start creating a shape? First you have to kind of have an idea in your head as to like what you're going to create, and that will give you kind of ideas as to how to go about creating the model. So let's just delete these and think about what we're going to create. Now, I've been thinking maybe creating a simple kind of humanoid type of character, and maybe like a cat humanoid character, but like simplified, kind of like a chibi character. Also notice my crosshair is like off from the origin point. If you want to manually set where the crosshair is, you could go here and type in the coordinate and then uncheck that if you don't want to move anything that's currently selected, and just hit apply, and it'll move the crosshair to whatever position you've put there. And also you can get the position where it's currently at by again reset, that sort of thing. So I want to create this character, and first I'll look at my tile set and maybe choose a tile somewhere on it where I want to place parts that are well, if you think about like the texture image, you're going to be placing different parts of the model in different sections on your texture. Different sections of the texture will correspond to different areas on your model, because parts of the texture have to be displayed on the surface of it. And so you want to think about how to organize your texture image, where you want stuff placed so that they're not overlapping other parts of the model. So, and you could also change and reposition stuff later if you want to, using inside the UV section. But for now, I'll just pick this tile, and then I will just place it right here, I guess. Now, you also have to think about how big you want to create your model, because the smaller you go, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to move things around more precisely, because you're limited by the pixel size. You can go inside the settings and adjust the base pixel unit size in the project settings if you want. If you want smaller pixels or larger pixels, because the base pixel unit size defines how many pixels there are in one 3D unit, and one tile has a size of one 3D unit, which is like 1 meter. Gets converted to like 1 meter basically. So, but that's a little bit more advanced stuff, so don't really worry too much about that. So I have this tile here. I'm going to change this to a grid rounding to 4 so I can just move it around more easily. And I'll maybe position up here, and I'm going to think about the head of the character first. I want to model the head of it. I don't know why, it just seems like a main part that's interesting. You could start with any part of the model, but for me, I'm just going to start with the head. And you can maybe place a couple like this, and maybe like this, maybe like that, just to get some quick shapes in there, to generalize the boundaries of the head. Maybe you could put some in the back right here, like that. And also I'm thinking about just one side of it, so I might mirror this later by selecting all the tiles like this and clicking on a vertice that is in the center of it, and then I could do Control C, Control V to paste it, and then hit R to mirror it. And when I mirror it, those tiles are inverted, so I could hold Shift, press R to reverse them. And now I have the other side, which is duplicated. Okay, so that's one way to create symmetry in your models, but I'm just going to delete that for now. Another way you could do it is by positioning your crosshair in the center of it, selecting all the tiles, and then going to right clicking the scene, going to faces, and then create object. This will put all those tiles into their own object. And then you can go into the scene and maybe like rename this head, and then you could double click that and go into the object properties and go into the mirror section, and then you can enable mirroring. And what this will do, it will automatically mirror all those tiles that you've created. Okay, and then you could select the object and hit enter, and it'll go into object edit mode, and now you could edit these tiles, and it'll edit all the tiles on the other side as you work. So all your changes to one side get updated to the other side. So that's another way of doing it if you want to actually see how symmetrical it is as you're working. So that's pretty useful, as you can see. And so you could have that enabled and then like adjust these vertices around to make like the head a little bit more rounded, so it's not as square, you know, something like that. So all of a sudden now we have this shape that's less rigid and has more organic shape to it, right? So that's pretty simple. And we could add more tiles than this if we want more more nuance to the types of shapes and that sort of thing, because right now it's very generalized, the topography of it, because the pieces of it are rather large compared to the whole. So we could go in and we could, if you want, you could select some tiles like this and then hit the middle mouse button and it'll put it into active edit mode, and then you could, it shows this line here to split tiles, so you could split the tiles into 2 tiles, and there's a setting down here, the tile splitting setting, and if you adjust this it'll change where you could split it, like how many pixels at a time basically, or along the space of it. I just leave it as 1 so that I could get more fine control over it. So like once you've picked a spot, you could like right click and go faces split, or press the shortcut key Alt plus S, and what that does, it just splits it like that. And then I could split this one as well and split that one as well. So now, as you can see, it also does it to the other side of it. And then you could exit out of that mode and deselect everything, Control D, and then you could kind of move these around and get a little bit more control over stuff. Maybe move this one down over here, maybe change your grid rounding size to 1, and then now you could kind of move stuff around more precisely, that sort of thing. Okay, maybe move this one over here so that it's kind of balanced between all the other vertices, kind of spread them out, that sort of stuff. Now notice how, since we split this tile, if we go into the UVs and we select these tiles, notice how the UV has also been split down the middle compared to other tiles that aren't split. It shows right here that this is the UV coordinates of this tile that's selected. Now all the tiles are using basically the same UV coordinates. That's why it shows up in the same spot. So as you're working, you may want to like move UVs around. Like I can move all of them at the same time, basically. Or I could toggle this button here so that I could select one at a time. So you can kind of separate all of them and then like reposition them wherever you want. So this one is relative to this tile over here. So I can maybe move that over here. This one, you could like select them, deselect them to kind of show them in the UV section being seen or being visible or invisible, so that you know which ones corresponds to which one. Now another thing you may want to do is kind of select all of this section and then go into the painting section, and then go, and you could enable the UVs by toggling this button. So while you're painting stuff, you can see where the UVs are so that you know where you need to paint for it to show up on the tile. And so this tile, if I paint over here, maybe with a color like that that's more easily seen, it paints right here. And if I paint up here, it goes to over there. And I can kind of go back to the UV section and then move the tiles relative to where I want them to be, basically where I want things to line up next to other UVs. So this tile corresponds to this UV right here, and it neighbors this tile over here that corresponds to these UVs. And notice how I could see that these pixels are along this edge right here, these dark pixels. So I know like where to place this relative to these UVs so that it kind of extends from it. Okay, if that makes sense. And then I have this one over here that could go like up here next to that one. And I have this one over here that kind of can extend from this one. Now notice how the shape of the tiles over here, they're all connected together, but on the UVs here, they're not connected. They're like going off in different directions. Like these UVs aren't touching the UVs over here. Okay, so that's one thing to think about, how you want to organize your UVs on your texture image. And you could kind of take these, for instance, and move them over here, rotate them, and then like position them next to these so that now they're connected with those UVs. And then maybe if you want it to represent the object better, you can maybe deselect those and then move this vertice UV coordinate up over there, and then maybe move this one right there. So now they're all kind of connecting together in a similar way. If you can see that, it's kind of difficult to see because of the colors. Maybe I'll change the colors. So I could select all the tile set and then go to painting, and then go to the paint bucket tool and make sure the contiguous option is off, and I'll select this color and this color. Maybe that's a little easier to see. So what we have is a shape here that represents the tiles kind of accurately, I guess. I guess these over here are more splayed out, and you could think about the concentration of the pixels on the surface of your tiles. This UV of this tile is taking up more space of the texture image, so there's like more pixel detail that's capable of being displayed on that tile compared to, say, this tile over here. It's taking up less space but has kind of a slightly larger area in 3D space. So like we could maybe deselect and kind of toggle this on, and then like move these vertices down a little bit, and then move that one down, maybe move these up, that one up a little bit. So now it's a little less stretched out, a little bit more accurate to the 3D shape. Okay, so there you go. Now you could also, if you want, you could select a color in here, like maybe that color. If you go into the UV section, you could select the UVs that you want to trace. You could trace them like so, and it'll trace the edges of the UVs. And what that is useful for doing is kind of marking out on the texture where things are located and allow you to paint them. Maybe you're using another paint program to create the texture, and so you could lay out some of the UVs and then trace them and then export the UV or export the image, you know, by exporting the tile set. Or you could another thing you could do is you could just in the UV tab right click, go to paint, export UV map image, and export all the selected UVs. I think they have to be selected, I'm not sure. And then it'll automatically do it for you. And you could also adjust the scale if you want. But that's a little bit more outside the scope of this video. I'm just kind of showing you certain things that you could think about doing while you're working on your model and your texture and that sort of thing. So you could also go paint and fill it with a solid color. You have to have the coordinates selected that you want to fill, and fill solid, and it'll fill it with a solid color. Like if you don't want that textured pattern there, for instance, it doesn't have to be there, so that it might be easier to paint on now without that textured pattern. Or if you want it back, if you want that textured pattern back, you could fill it with a textured pattern, and it'll use the colors that you have that are currently selected if you want to do that. So maybe you didn't start off with a textured tile set. Maybe your tile set is completely one color. You could fill in areas of UVs with a textured pattern just to get an idea as to how those pixels are stretched out on those tiles, and then you can fix it that way if you want. Okay, so I'm just going to undo that for now. so let's say I want to add kind of another part to this. Like maybe I want to create like an ear, some sort of cat ear shape to it. How would I do that? So I guess there's lots of different ways to go about things. You just have to kind of be creative about it, I guess. If you hold Control, it'll select vertices closest to the mouse of the tile that you're hovering over. So if I hold Control and click right here, it'll select the vertex that belongs to this specific tile, and it won't select any of the other vertices. So that's an easy way to kind of separate a vertex from a group of vertices that are overlapping. So I could select it from this tile, and then I could select it from this other tile by holding Control and clicking there. So now I have two vertices selected that aren't connected to this other one. So I could do that and then kind of move them over. So it kind of creates this gap here, and then I could kind of select this other vertex, maybe move it over here, kind of create space for more tiles to kind of get extended out from this open area. Okay, so how do I start creating tiles that extend? So there are various ways. You could just you can go back to a tile and then click a tile and then add it like so, and it'll automatically duplicate it because we're in object edit mode, editing this object that has a mirrored attribute to it. If you're not in object edit mode, if you've exited out of it and you start placing tiles, they don't correspond to the object anymore, and that's why it's not mirrored. So depending on how you go about it, maybe you haven't made a mirrored object, maybe you have, but you could go back into object edit mode and just start placing more tiles like so, and then you could kind of you could click and drag and then hold shift to kind of move those vertices and snap them onto other vertices, and then kind of move this other one over there, maybe move this one down here and snap it onto that one. So now you have like these new tile pieces that are touching these other ones, extending it out the shape, and then you could like move these vertices around and kind of shape it a little bit better. So that's another thing. You could remember to save often and create a new folder here and then call it cat01. You may want to create multiple files as you're working, so I'll name it cat01. So maybe you don't like how it's shaped. It doesn't look cat-like enough. It looks more like a bunny or something like that. So you can just rearrange the vertices and that sort of thing. Let's say you don't, well, actually, I'll just leave them for now, but I'll show you different ways to add tiles as well. So I want this to kind of go over here, and maybe they're too close together. So I'm going to select just these, kind of separate them like so. going to select this one. I guess this one could go over there as well. And then I'm going to select these, move them down, move this one over there. So that'll be like the top of the head. Maybe I can move these down a bit. This is kind of like maybe more of the forehead area. You know, in the beginning, the shape isn't going to be completely accurate to what you want. That's why you have to keep like messing with the vertices to get what you want, basically, how you have it imagined in your head, you know. And at the moment, I don't really have too much imagined in my head right now because I have to talk about other things and try and get this a little useful to people who are watching. So I'm going to create more space over on this side because I want the top of the head, I don't want the ears to be connected together, right? I want there to be some space between them and have the ears more towards the sides of the head. Okay, so I've moved those over, and there's also these back here, so I could control click that one and move that back, maybe connect it there. Actually, I'm gonna snap down that one over there, and as you can see, these tiles in the back are very big, so I'm going to maybe split this one in half like so. Okay, and I just, I went into active edit mode by hitting middle mouse button and then Alt S, and just to quickly split that, and then deselect that. I can move these back now to give it more of a shape, more of a rounded shape, and kind of move this one over here, and maybe move these down over here. So as you can see, the shape is already getting pretty complex. You don't have to make it this complex. You can make it really simple if you want. If you want it really low poly. And also another thing to think about, if you select a tile, you could change the direction that this diagonal line is by pressing Shift F. That'll flip that around. So you could adjust how each tile, how the two triangles on a tile are orientated, if you want a little bit more control over stuff. So like for instance, these down here, you could do that. So now it's a little bit more, have like a cone shape to it. Maybe this one, maybe you want it like that, so that it's, so that like maybe this is like the cheek of the cat, and then you have like the separation right here between the ear and the side of the face. So let's say you want to add more tiles. You could for instance click these, select those, and then copy paste them and then move them out like this, and kind of reposition them where you want them to be. Or you could just click and drag, hold Shift to snap it if you want to do that. Sometimes that's just a little quicker. Okay. So from here, I want these to kind of go up like that. starting to have like a little bit more of a ear shape to it. Maybe I want this to triangulate that way. Maybe these could be connected like that. Just have to play with it, see how it looks from different angles. Copy this over, paste it down. Oops, I didn't paste it. So copy, paste. And drag that over there, drag it over there, over there, over there. So now it fills in that space. So now we're kind of getting towards the tip of the ear. I'm trying to imagine how I want the rest of it to look. You can make it very simple or make it more complicated. I guess I will copy those over and just snap them. On there like that. Okay, so yeah, I think that'll work. Another thing that you might find useful is selecting some vertices and then hitting C, and it'll center the camera around that selection. So you could select one and then hit C and it'll center the camera around it. Also, this up here, camera based selection, if you want that on or off depending on what you want to select, so that you don't select stuff in the back. So I need about 3 more tiles, so I'll just copy them like that and then drag them over. Oops. And there you go. Now we have like this shape of this ear, and it's Seems alright. I kind of rushed it a little bit, but you could kind of adjust it a little bit and get it however you want it to look. It's kind of pointy looking ears. Maybe change some of the triangulation of it. So you can see how using those techniques you can start creating shapes that are a lot more interesting and not as, square and rectangular. And now that you have those tiles, you can kind of select them like so and go into the UV editor and then reposition them wherever you want them on your texture image. We have these over here that are positioned right here. So if you wanted, you could kind of continue extending them like so. You have to kind of consider like how things are placed on the texture, because how you're gonna draw it and that sort of stuff. Maybe you want everything orientated a different direction, or I don't know. It's up to you. You have this tile over here. Maybe you want to move these vertices like so to kind of represent the shape of it a little bit better. Like maybe there's too much pixel detail, too many pixels concentrated on the image, so you can make the UV area a little smaller so that the pixels become larger on the face of the UV. You can move this down here, connect it over there. This one kind of go over there, change that over there. Oops, I think I have this. Let's see, is that it? Yeah, okay. Had it orientated the wrong way. So that probably goes something like that. Maybe there needs to be more pixels over there. So you kind of, that's why the checkered texture helps a little, because you can compare the different sizes of the pixels on the tiles and kind of get them more balanced, I guess. It doesn't have to be balanced, but it might be nice to keep them balanced so that when you're creating the texture, when you're pixeling it and that sort of stuff, things kind of look consistent. There's a certain aesthetic that is nice about having things that are somewhat consistent versus other stuff that is kind of disconnected and that sort of thing. You can notice here how this tile, the pixels kind of look a little smaller compared to the other pixels, so kind of reduce the size of it to kind of adjust it. maybe I'll shape the front of it, front of the head later, so that it might not be that important right now to get the UVs completely how I want them. It's just a matter of fiddling with it and seeing what works, what doesn't work, that sort of stuff. And that process can take some time sometimes. So like maybe I want this further back. Maybe I want to re-triangulate that. Move that about back a little bit. Maybe move these back like that. Maybe re-triangulate that. Maybe move that down. Maybe move this over here, or maybe that down, so that the face isn't elongated so much. It's kind of up to you to decide how you want it to look, basically. So if we continue over here, kind of get idea of like what UVs are being selected. Maybe they're too close to the top of the texture. I could like select everything and move things down a bit if I wanted to do that. So this one, I think, let's go like this. Yeah, okay, that's the right way, I think. And if you need to be like reminded how things are orientated, sometimes it helps to draw little details on the texture, just so that you know like how things are orientated. This one, because I rotated it, it's become kind of off the grid, off the pixel grid. So I could select all the vertices here and then just right click and align the selection. Wait a second. Transform and then round to nearest pixel. Oops, I have to have it selected. Round to nearest pixel, and now those vertices, those coordinates, are rounded to the pixel, and now I could overlap them again. So as you can see, as you work, it's just like basically one section of the model at a time, just kind of figuring things out, kind of shaping it. It doesn't happen instantly, right? It goes through a process where you test things out, see what looks good, change stuff if it doesn't look right to you, if you want things different. But you know, it's relatively simple. You just have to go through the steps, right? So this one's like that. So rotate it like that. So like once you have the UVs kind of like mapped out how you want them to be, you can kind of select, oops, I saved it. Remember to save your work. You can select all the UVs, and then if they don't show up, you can kind of click on the space to kind of refresh it. So there are the UVs kind of mapped out. And if we go into the painting editor, if you don't see it in the painting editor, it might be because you have like a tile selected and it only shows what you have selected. So you may have to, you know, select the whole section there and then go into painting and toggle it on, the UVs on. And then you can go in here and start like painting away. Maybe you want, maybe the eye of the character could go right there. I don't know. It's up to you. Maybe the nose is somewhere around there. As you can see, just by doing that, it's starting to have like this appearance to it. There's like this organic roundness, this shape to it, and you know, from this point you could just add some cool colors and pixel details to kind of make it more interesting. Like, you don't have to put all your focus on the geometry and the triangulation of it. You could put a lot of the work into the texture and create interest that way instead if you want. If you're good at creating like 2D art and textures and that sort of thing, you know, you could apply your skills in that way as well. You know, maybe I want to create like some shininess to the eye. Maybe I could create some videos in the future on how to pixel stuff, you know, more like 2D text, 2D tutorials maybe, I don't know. If people are interested in that, if they want to learn about that sort of thing. So like just by doing that, shading it in a two-dimensional way, you could add some interesting detail and that sort of stuff. And let's see. If I don't want to like pixel all that in, I can just go over here, select these for instance, maybe those two, and okay, that's my color that I'm using. I can just right click, paint, fill solid, and it'll fill those areas. Pretty cool. So as you can see, it's already looking rather interesting. And I have the wireframe displayed. You can turn that on and off if you want. The wireframe kind of helps you see like the triangulation of everything. So that's kind of useful to have on when you're creating a character model and that sort of stuff. So let's see. Oh yeah, another thing you may want to consider, like in this case we've created all of this detail and we've painted it, that sort of thing. But what if we want to like move this around? What if after a while of working we say, oh, maybe I should have positioned this somewhere else. You know, I've positioned this right there, it's kind of close to the edge, and maybe I don't want it there. So how do we move it? Okay, so let's select the parts that you want to move. In this case, I'm just going to select everything. But you know, you could just select whichever parts you want. You could hold Shift and drag and select those, for instance. Actually, I guess I'll just do that. So I've selected those, and now I want to move them. So I could just click over here, Control A, select all those, and then I could just click and drag them elsewhere. Like maybe I want to move them down here. As you can see, now those pixels don't align with the UV coordinates. But I'm not done yet. Maybe I want to rotate these coordinates. First I'm going to reposition that over there just so that things rotate nicely. Okay, so I'm gonna move this right here. I think that is a little better positioned. It's not too close to the edge of the texture. And so now I have those positioned there. Now I could go into the paint section and I could just select the part that I want to reposition. and I could hold Control, and then you could see this scissors cursor show up, and then I just click and drag. I could let go of Control now because it's clipped. This section's clipped. And now I could rotate this like so, and then I could kind of move this down. Maybe I should actually, maybe I'll just move it right there. I can go back into the UVs and just reposition it like that. There we go. Is that where it was before? I think so. I think that's aligned now. Is it? Seems about right. So we've basically moved it. And now we could kind of fill in that area that we've cut out. You could fill it in like that, or you could use this checkered fill option to fill it in with a texture. You could hold Alt and kind of pick which colors you use. There we go. It's picking the wrong color. And then we can do that. Or we could swap those colors because it created like an edge around it. So now we have that moved basically. And then you could continue, adjusting the UVs and that sort of thing. So I think maybe I'll just leave this video for now, and maybe I'll upload it and get some feedback and see what people want me to focus on, if they have any questions about things, and then go from there. I think I've shown you a pretty good way to start and how to get some interesting shapes to stuff, and how to texture them, how to adjust the UVs and that sort of thing. And notice how this section's automatically mirrored. If you didn't want to use a mirrored object, you could just copy, paste, mirror, and then reverse the tiles and that sort of thing if you wanted to do it that way. You could also deconstruct this object, and it'll deconstruct it so it's not inside an object if you wanted. But anyways, I hope this is helpful for you to start creating characters, and I'll try to create more of these. Maybe I'll continue working on this character and make it complete. But until next time, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions, if you want me to focus on anything specific, if there's anything you're having trouble with, that sort of thing, just let me know. All right.